In the dead of night, 400 armed men gather in a hidden cave. Their leader stands before them, a man who just months ago was celebrated as Israel's greatest hero. Now, he raids villages, plays both sides of a war, and commands an army of outlaws. Yet in this darkest chapter of his life, he clings to one unchanging truth: his faith in God. This isn't the David you think you know. This is the story of how a shepherd boy became a warlord, and how his unwavering faith during these brutal years forged Israel's most powerful king. These are the hidden years of King David that changed everything. The streets of Jerusalem pulse with life under the scorching sun. Merchants hawk their wares, priests climb the temple steps, and everywhere, people sing a new song, a song that would seal one man's fate. Saul has struck down his thousands and David his 10,000s. 1 Samuel 18:7. David stands at the pinnacle of success, barely recognizable as the shepherd boy who once faced Goliath. Now he commands King Saul's armies, his name whispered with awe from Dan to Beersheba. Princess Michal's eyes follow him with undisguised love, while Prince Jonathan has given him his own royal robe, marking David as a brother. But in the shadowed corridors of power, success can be the deadliest weapon. Inside the palace walls, King Saul's mind begins to unravel. Each echo of the people's song drives him deeper into darkness. The Bible captures the moment when fatherly pride transforms into murderous jealousy, and Saul was very angry. They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands, and what more can he have but the kingdom? 1 Samuel 18:8. The breaking point comes during a royal feast. Torches flicker against stone walls as nobles feast at decorated tables. The air is heavy with incense and wine. David sits at his usual place, unaware that everything is about to change. In one heart-stopping moment, Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear. David fled and escaped that night. 1 Samuel 19:10. That spear, thudding into the wall where David's head had been moments before, marks the end of one life and the beginning of another. Israel's hero has just become its most wanted fugitive. That desperate flight into the wilderness marks the beginning of David's transformation. The celebrated commander finds refuge in the cave of Adullam, a massive limestone cavern cutting deep into the Judean hills. But God has plans beyond mere survival. Word spreads through the kingdom's shadows, in taverns where debtors hide, in prisons where the desperate languish, in homes where bitter men nurse their wounds. One by one, then in groups, they begin arriving at his hidden stronghold. The Bible paints a vivid picture of these unlikely warriors. And everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone bitter in soul gathered to him, and he became commander over them. 1 Samuel 22:ho. These aren't the trained soldiers he once led in Saul's army. They're society's cast-offs, men with nothing left to lose. But David sees something in them that others missed: the raw material of an army. In the harsh wilderness, necessity becomes their teacher. Every day brings new challenges: finding food, avoiding Saul's patrols, training for survival. The Bible records their constant state of alert. And David remained in the strongholds in the wilderness, and Saul sought him every day. 1 Samuel 23:14. But mere survival isn't enough. An army needs resources, and David makes a bold decision. His band becomes protectors of the borderlands, guarding wealthy shepherds' flocks for a price. It's a dangerous game, walking the line between protection and extortion. Your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. 1 Samuel 25:7. Yet even this precarious existence becomes threatened as Saul's pursuit intensifies. Each dawn brings new dangers, each sunset new prayers for guidance. Caught between the king's armies and Israel's ancient enemies, David's faith is tested daily. Deep in the wilderness caves of En Gedi, fate presents David with a moment that will define his character. The air is thick with tension as Saul enters a cave alone, unaware that David and his men watch from the shadows. His men whisper excitedly, "Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, 'Behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it shall seem good to you. 1 Samuel 24.4. It would be so easy. One quick thrust of the sword, and the hunt would be over. David's men urge him forward, but his faith holds him back. Instead of taking Saul's life, he merely cuts off a corner of his robe. Even this tiny act troubles his conscience. And afterward, David's heart struck him, because he had cut off a corner of Saul's robe. 1 Samuel 24.5. Later, God tests him again. David finds Saul sleeping among his troops, completely vulnerable. His captain, Abishai, breathes words of temptation. God has given your enemy into your hand this day. Now please, let me pin him to the earth with one stroke of the spear, and I will not strike him twice. 1 Samuel 26:8. But David, even after years of running, refuses to gain the kingdom through bloodshed. But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him, for who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" 1 Samuel 26:9. With Saul's pursuit relentless, David makes his most audacious move yet. He approaches the Philistines, the very people whose champion he once slew. The Bible reveals his desperate calculation. David said in his heart, "Now I shall perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape to the land of the Philistines." 1 Samuel 27:1. What follows is a masterclass in deception. By day, he raids Israel's enemies, but tells the Philistine king he's attacking his own people. And David and his men went up and made raids against the Geshurites. When Achish asked, "Where have you made a raid today?" David would say, "Against the Negeb of Judah." 1 Samuel 27:8-10. His deception works perfectly, too perfectly. The Philistine king Achish makes him a personal bodyguard, and Achish trusted David, thinking, "He has made himself an utter stench to his people Israel, therefore he shall always be my servant." 1 Samuel 27:12. Just when his elaborate scheme seems unstoppable, disaster strikes. Returning to his base at Ziklag, David finds his worst nightmare. When David and his men came to the city, they found it burned with fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. 1 Samuel 33. Everything he's built threatens to crumble. His own men, in their anguish, turn against him. David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul. 1 Samuel 36. But this moment reveals why David was always destined for more than just survival. When everything falls apart, he finds strength not in schemes or power, but in faith. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And David asked the Lord, "Shall I pursue after this band?" He answered him, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake and shall surely rescue." 1 Samuel 36:8. The shepherd boy who became a warlord emerges from these years transformed. When news finally arrives of Saul's death, David doesn't seize power through force. Instead, he seeks divine guidance. After this, David asked the Lord, "Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah?" 2 Samuel 2:1. These forgotten years forged Israel's greatest king. Every lesson learned in the wilderness, every hard choice, every moment of faith in darkness, all of it prepared him for the throne. And David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. 2 Samuel 5:10. But the story doesn't end here. The skills that kept David alive in the wilderness would lead to choices that would shake his kingdom. Want to know how these warlord years influenced his most controversial decisions as king? The Bible holds countless stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary moments. Ready to discover another remarkable chapter? Check out our other videos to explore more hidden stories from Scripture that might just surprise you. See you in the next video.